Good morning. Good morning. Good to see everybody. Letting everyone's audio get connected, letting the waiting room clear out. Good morning, Greg. Good to see you. Morning, press. All right. All right. Looks like everything's good to go. Good morning. Welcome to the Market Watch Group midweek check-in. My name is Scott. I will be your host. Here are our disclaimers. As always, remember, this is for educational illustrative purposes. We are not advisors. We do not provide guidance, yada, yada. Here's today's agenda. Good morning, Perry. Hello, Bob. Good to see you both. Today's opening analysis. What are the futures doing? What news has come out? What are we expecting? We'll take a look at what the market's done and just a real quick peek at our market posture to see, are we on point? Did we miss something? Is anything changing midweek? Mindset for open trades. It's kind of an interesting place where we're at. Could still be pushing some bullish trades, possibly. We might have shut them down. We'll see what today brings. Are there setups? Are we getting triggers? We'll review the we'll review our watch list to see if there's any triggers developing. And talk about our trading plan progress, what section we're working on. This week we're working on record keeping, so implementing a log, committing to a log process, developing a logging cadence, etc. Excellent. Let's get to it. Futures were hovering and then took a market turn up. S&P futures are up 0.4%. Dow 0.2%, NASDAQ 0.55%. Russell about 0.25%. Oil is up 0.79%. So we've been watching oil. We're saying, hey, all of a sudden there's been a little surge. We haven't seen the next selling cycle, but we like to keep our eye on that oil to see if it's ever going to raise up again into a where it adds inflationary pressures. As of now, not. Good morning, Michael. Good to see you. Okay, so the futures are up. What else? What's the news then? Because it turned quickly. What day is today? Today is Wednesday. I don't see any news here. It could be earnings-based news. Did you see Snap? Let's see what we have going on here. Snap. Nope. Snap. They reported earnings here. Nice run. Look at that run up. We saw some of that run up. We got rid of it when it was chopping around. It just sort of marched up, trading around. Now we're set to open at 11, about right here. It's going to come all the way back down to 12 when we open. So interesting ride for Snap. Yeah, I'm not seeing. Tell me if you heard of something that I'm missing other than just sort of the underlying momentum. I don't see something in the news that has this catalyst, because you could see it did take an abrupt turn up all at the same time. Yeah, no, I don't see it. What do we have by way of news? Nothing. That's what we've talked about. That's why I said the market this week may have a tendency just to drift in the direction it's already been going, which is up. It looks like we may be seeing a little bit of that. We'll see what our signals look like as we go through. Tomorrow, so the rest of today brings a lot more Fed speak. So we've got some Fed speak, a consumer credit report. No real expectation for that. It comes late in the day. Tomorrow, jobless claims, one more Fed speaker. Friday, CPI, seasonal revisions, nothing really there, and another Fed speaker. So it's just, there's not a lot that way. Let's take a quick peek at our Fed watch to see if we're starting to see some stability. And it looks like we have that now. It's where has it landed? For a while, it was 1.5, even 2-1 in favor. I mean, there was a point there where it was like 4-1. Everyone's like, oh yeah, we're getting that cut. It's gonna be great. Now it's 4-1 against, that we stay unchanged in March. And it seems to be pretty steady here. So the good news is we've adjusted at this point. We've adjusted to this new reality that the Fed's going to be a little bit more conservative. I wouldn't say hawkish because he's not hawkish. He's just more slow to become dovish than the market was expecting. So that's why I think that the market's response has been subdued. It's not, we haven't had hardly even a consolidation. In fact, we were looking for more of a consolidation in order to give us some trading signals, right? So at this point, we're now priced in a 4-1 against, that we're just going to keep the rates unchanged through the second meeting of the year. Sometimes when we adjust expectations to things like this, it's kind of tough, but this has been fairly reasonable. Here's May. May still has a 36. For a while there, May, when we looked at May, the most we saw was a 10% chance that that was still where we are now, 525 by 550. There's pretty good odds, better odds than not, of getting that first cut in May. But it could even go to June. I've said I would expect pushing it to Q2. But what I would be in the May camp. I think at least a couple of you have said not until June. And you can see that June is where it's basically like, yes, by June, we'll have at least a 25 basis and 50-50 odds, maybe slightly a little more, that we have a second. So May and June. Okay, that's our Fed story for now. Still a good story. It still represents easing, just not quite yet. It's nice to see the Fed making sure. Okay, perfect. Perfect. Let's go take a look at our futures as we are pre-market. And here's what's tough is, we said there may be some trades that are just consolidating and they may break out. We have to decide if we think that's what's happening. Yeah. So the futures are up about 0.4% right now. Let's see what the VIX is looking like right now as we wait for the market to open. Okay, so VIX has come down. Remember what we said. We scored the VIX. We scored this as a lower high to this, coming down. we scored that as a lower high, which means we gave it an extra quarter of a point. And we did it based on this candle here. So that was a good candle. No, that's wrong. The next candle. Sorry. Nope. Based on this candle here. And the next day it looked a little uncertain, but it worked. And then now we're coming down. So that was a good call to say, yeah, look, it looks like it's a lower high. Where does it need to get next? Remember that we're looking for it to get all the way back at a minimum to here. If it doesn't, so here we are again. This is we've been in this scenario where we're kind of like, ooh, you know what also is setting up here? A potential higher low in this continued escalation. So you might think, well, how does it go from a lower high to a higher low? What would that pattern look like? Well, this is the lower high, but if I get a signal like this, then all of a sudden I also have a higher low and I have a triangle. That's still a little scary right there. That's still a higher low. I'm still gonna put a hedge on, especially if I have. Now, if you don't have any bullish trades on, you don't have anything to hedge, so you don't have to worry about that as much. But I'll definitely hedge that higher low if it shows up. So in the back of my mind, I have that. And I will put that alert out if that's what it is this week. Okay, questions about what we see on the VIX, how we're looking at it. Now, if it gets all the way back to here, it's not that far. That's good. It shuts down the hedge signal. If it gets through that, then that's great because there were some, that's what the expectation was off the lower high. And if it gets through that at this point, when it gets through, that would add another quarter of a point to the market posture for the VIX. Okay, so I kind of went backwards. I started with the VIX and then talked about the posture. Let's take a quick peek at the SPY. Hasn't opened yet. How are we seeing it this week? Well, we looked for the bounce. It did. It didn't quite get all the way up to this line. You can see it's moving. It's in this range. It's close. Could it maybe rally up and get towards this or close to this? Yeah, let's see. I think that identifying this as a support level and raising the score there, you remember. Oh, sorry. I apparently don't have my posture log up. Give me 1 second to grab that. Okay. There we go. So the long term we left alone, but had scored that up the previous week to say that's a breakout. Yeah, we're moving as if it's post breakout. This week we scored the short term up. Yeah, we bounced off that trend. Volume we moved up as well to a 0.75. Let's see how the volume looks. So we have that was the last day that scored us up. This week, not yet. We'll see what today brings by way of volume and by way of where it goes from there. But yeah, so far I would say we're in line with what we were expecting. Posture looks on point. Does anyone have any concerns as they look at this major market? The S&P, or excuse me, in the major market, our concern was, is the Russell going to bounce? Oh, it's trying. This is an interesting point right here. This is the biggest adjustment to the Fed, right? This has come down more, and then it had this consolidation. We broke out of it. Great, pulled back at the 50 at a higher low. This is crunch time for small caps. It's now or it's unlikely to hold. If this doesn't hold and the small caps kind of bow out in lead of being in a leadership spot, it's not like this crushing thing. The score drops by a quarter of a point. If we see the Dow continue to struggle with the Nasdaq and the Russell falls out, then we might see it drop back a little bit further. But the Nasdaq's chugging along just fine. But this is an interesting thing for us to watch. Can the small caps can they move? Do they do that? Whoops. Do they do this with at least the old high and hopefully even a little more? That is what we need by way of maintaining the bullishness that we're currently scoring for in the major market analysis. Sectors have been as usual. We didn't get a lot of follow through from Amazon after earnings. Amazon was kind of like by itself trying to pull the consumer discretionary sector. It's not seeing any follow through, so we're not seeing much there still, but we haven't expected much there. But other than that, tech, communication services, industrials, financials are all still where they were. So yeah, this looks fine as well. So I would say, yeah, posture looks good. No changes necessary. Let's go look at our open in the beginning of our opening range. So we did gap up. Little bit of a pullback off the open, which is not like it's like, oh, that's it. No, this is just like, okay, we're just watching this thing adjust now. Remember what happens is the market makers come in. Why do we watch the first 20 minutes? Because the market makers come in and the first thing they're doing, they get to their huge advantage and why that gaps is because they come in and they get to see all the overnight orders. Everybody who put an order in that said sell at market, which is, right at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. So the whole from 4:01 p.m. until 9:30 a.m. the next day, anyone who puts a market order in just gets in this line. And you might be thinking, why would they do that? I don't know, but they do. They can also see the limit orders around, right? All that's in their books. And so they have a sense of like, oh, okay. So based on what we have now, there was an imbalance, more buyers than sellers. So what did they do? They rose, the price gapped up. More buyers than sellers. That's the thing is it tends to be close, but sometimes the futures are like, what's up 0.2 and then it's 0.4. Why? Because there was more of an imbalance than what the 0.2 was demonstrating in the orders. Then as the market opens and the orders continue to come in, you're processing both the remaining overnights that were maybe in line with limits and then the new market orders coming in. And that's why it just tends to be a little bit more volatile. There's just back and forth as they're trying to figure out, are we on the right spot for pricing for that day? And then it settles in. And then you're like, okay, here we go. It's even worse in the options market. The first 20 minutes, options go crazy. That's why I say if I have a stop order that's going to trigger an option to sell in the first minute or on the open, I'll cancel it. I would rather wait. And I think even if the stock drops further, I'll do better waiting for the first 20 minutes than trying to close in that opening frenzy. That's why we talk about that. Okay. So posture looks good. Let's go back out. And let's get to our watch list. It's quiet out there today. Oh, press. My favorite. We took it off the list. PLTR, Palantir. Did they report earnings? Oh yeah, there you go. We took it off the list. You can see why back here, right? We're just like, yeah. And it just sort of sideways. It reported earnings and then bammo. Good for technology though, right? It's not like, oh man, I stopped watching it and I wasn't in it when it's like, hey, great. I might put it back on my watch list, Press. Oh, okay. I see what you were trading. Bob made a little piece prior to earnings. Here's what I will say. Here was their consolidation. And you can see it did break the consolidation. It did come back. I mean, I can see it. It tried to come up a little bit there. Nice. Nicely done. Let's look through the list. Let's get the whole list. Starting with Apple. Okay, so Apple. Coming out of earnings was tough to try to trade. And because it's coming out of earnings, I'm not going to be like, I don't know. This is a tough one. At this point, as long as we get, if and when it pulls back, this might continue up from here. It doesn't look great for a continuation trade. I would imagine it actually has positive Heiken Ashi candles. If you wanted to trade into it, all you're doing is just thinking, get behind these Heiken Ashi and trail them up. I just don't think even then there's enough meat now that you're this far behind. You're 3 days into the Heiken Ashis, which is 2 days later than I would want to be for a signal personally. So what's the thought process? Oh, you're already in. If you're already in, then fantastic. You're managing from this perspective. Great. Stop loss here. Next day, move it up, move it up. At some point, you might decide to go down to a 4-hour. You can see the 4-hour shows a slightly different perspective. 4-hour worked great last time. The 4-hour would get you out with more profit at the top of this than the daily would every time. So you might say, you know what? I'm gonna go with the 4-hour. And I'm just gonna keep moving my stop up behind it. Boom, move it up, move it up, move it up, move it up. And when this thing rolls over, you're here, right? So on this one, on this last move, you would have had a stop at, well, let's say 194.25, something like that. Okay, 194.25 based on this last candle. I'm going to show you the difference between daily and 4-hour. Here, your stop is at 192.60, 192.60. So 194.25 versus 192.60. You can see as it gets to the tail end, that's why I want to move. But there are times where in a move like this, that's my drawing tools. The 4-hour sometimes can do this, where if you did the 4-hour too early in the trade, it would pick you off halfway. You don't necessarily, but that didn't happen last time. So my thought is maybe you could go ahead and put that thought process into play on something like this. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I love when you tell me, I'm always going to spend a little more time when you tell me you're in a trade talking about them. Let's get this back to candles. Let's go to AIG. AIG still setting up, and it's interesting because here the stochastics looked like it wanted to cross, but the candles were still dojis. Now it looks like, hey, I like the way that candle looks, but it almost looks like the stochastics is still a little bit uncertain. We have earnings on 213 aftermarket. That's on Tuesday. So at this point, you've only got today and 4 past it to decide if this thing can make its move or not. It's still a maybe, I would say. AMD, you can see AMD signaled and then just quickly fell apart. If you got in early enough, if you got in anticipatory, you might have broke even. If you got in early here, you probably took a small loss. That's what happened for me. Anyone else trade AMD? I'm curious. I love chips. Amgen, what is AMD now? I would still say it's there's some viability to it if it doesn't break back below this. If it holds here and then turns, I'd try again. Absolutely. Yeah. A little false start and then ready to go. I'm fine with that. And Amgen, oof, look at that sucker turning around pretty quickly. We said we're a little cautious about medical stocks, and you can see there today. We'll go look at the heat map before we wrap up. I wonder if medicals is off a little bit. Here's Amazon. Okay, so it's not following through, but it had a huge earnings report. Uh, it's also not giving back much in profit taking. I would be okay even down to this halfway in the gap. If it came down there and held, that's still quite strong because if you notice, that still would indicate an acceleration, something along those lines. So, yeah, let's be watching it. It's not tradable right now, in my opinion. AXP just kind of kept on going. Boeing, nothing there still. BK, setting up still. I like BK. It's pulling back. The trend looks great. We've got a nice setup position down here. Just waiting to see if this thing will turn. Yeah. I need a new list. Got to make my notes. BK. BK looks pretty good. AIG was okay. I'd put that on still as well. AIG, BK, BLDR. I wouldn't expect. I mean, after these two positive days, if you were still in, that would make sense. But when it pulls back for these 2 days, I don't see. Did anyone who took this stay in? I was in this. I had the last piece on and shut down here on Monday. Just didn't do anything else. And then all of a sudden today it's up again a little bit. So there you go. Stochastics looks like it's pulling back. We'll see. For me, and my thought is there time for this to pull back and maybe give one more trade prior to earnings? Make sure we recognize that. So there we go. Boeing got hit again. Appears they left the bolts out when they worked on that door plug. Oh, goodness. Are they dropping today? Oh, no, they're hit by bad news, but the stock's holding up. So Citigroup looks really good still. So I told you the setups were in financials. They haven't materialized, but they haven't disappeared either. We're in the same signal here as we were earlier in the week. It's just a matter of, is this thing going to turn and give us that next move up? Sometimes you have to wait a little bit before you get that signal. But when you get that signal, get what you want and get some nice trades. So be patient, and financials are still there. Sometimes you're waiting for signals that they don't come, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh man, it's disappeared. We're not there yet. The signal is still valid. It's still there. The setup is there. We're just waiting for a trigger. Caterpillar, it seems like they did pretty well with their earnings, but at this point, we're waiting to see where's this next consolidation go. Not tradable yet, but certainly something I'm watching. Next is Capital One. I would expect it to be pretty okay looking still. It sure is. All our financials are in this similar situation. Oil. Oh, I mean, I'll tell you right now, that would be viable. That's what's the thought process? It broke the consolidation, right? That was a nice bull run. We talked about that bullishness. Then it pulled back, higher low. Stochastics is turning up. If you're ever like, hey, what does a good technical signal look like? It looks like that. What's the problem, Bob? Bob has a good call out. Earnings. I'm not going to put it on right before earnings. That was where I said, yeah, okay. I'm also not convinced yet, but yes, that does that would be the signal I would be looking for that indicates something's completed a reversal. Okay. Costco still going, right? Still going. There's strong was a nice trade. Anybody still in this? We talked about it back here on this, not the first one, the second one. The first one would have been very much an anticipatory trade, but the second one was definitely confirmed. Nice move since then. Do you still have any open? Well done if you do. Same kind of a thing these last 2 days. Might have been hard. If you stayed in a small piece just to see with a tightened stop, that makes sense. Crowd. So crowd gave a signal here. And it paused for 2 days. This is one where it's easy to be out, but it never turned over. So hopefully if you started in it, you're still in it today and you're rewarded with some of that Palantir momentum. Anybody in this? Let me know. All right. So again, one of the things I'd say you really have to convince yourself of is patience in trades. When you see a candle and you're just so sure that's the end of the road, it's like, well, let's give it one more day. And it's funny because we do that with our losers. Let's give it another day and see if it comes back, right? So we let hope keep us in losing trades longer than we should. And then we don't let that into the winners. We're like, well, let's just see. Let's just give it one more day because the next day, if it turns around, we have regret, right? And you can see how that impacts our decision from day to day, where these two candles are so ominous, and now they just look like they paused on the way up. And who knows? You can see it's already down a little from the high, but that's just something to think about. CSX just keeps going. That's pretty strong. That's nice for railroads, but really it's just came right out of the earnings that way. Delta, it's a little iffy still for me, so I'm still watching the airlines. Same thing with the home builders. Dow, still rambling, meandering along, Fastenal. Made a move, right? There was a trade that set up in here, started to go, turned over. If you took it, I would expect you're out of it. I would say possibly break even, maybe a small loss, but it shouldn't be bad. Took a stab at it and it just sort of didn't materialize. And same thing. Would I trade this again if it pulls back another day or two and then turns? Yes. Because it's a failed trade doesn't necessarily, that just is a false start, possibly. It didn't break any support levels, right? Some of my best trades are the second trade, right? Where I take a stab and it fails, and then the next time it takes off. And I would miss those sometimes because it's like I'm still thinking about the last trade where I'm like, oh, it didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, the next trade, bam, it's like a rocket. And it's like, that's the one. That's what I was looking for. But I got in on the false start and then took my eye off the ball. So yeah, false start. If you took a small loss, I don't see how you could take a big loss on this. So small loss should be fine to then say, great. Let's look at the next one. GE, overextended, gold, sideways. Google, trying to figure it out. I'm hopeful. I'm rooting for Google. It's not tradable yet. Home Depot, sideways, consumer discretionary, still struggling. IBM, still viable for me. IBM's viable. It's in a setup. Great earnings, smashed up. There's been some times where you can see it. It's come into the gap a little bit. I give it to the halfway point. It didn't even do that. It's right here. Yeah, I'm still see that well. Intel, nothing there. IWM, it's not looking good today. JP Morgan, gosh, I don't know. I mean, it kind of, I don't think it looks as good. I'm not going to put that on. I think the other ones that we have look better. I think Citi looks great. That's one I'm looking for the most. Meta, look at it. It's trying to come out of its earnings already. I don't know. I still think consolidation. But there's some strength there. Microsoft, that might be tradable. Both of those. I'm going to put them on the list. Meta and Microsoft. If they just start breaking out, those things can run. We've seen it. We've already seen it. Netflix on the list. So what do we have? We have financials, definitely. We have a couple of communication services, couple of technology. NVIDIA, nope, just kind of stalling a little bit after such a magnificent run. Car, that was one that was tradable. And this one, if you got in as it's breaking out, then you maybe got to squeeze a little bit of profit. The industrials didn't provide a great signal and follow through. Qs are up 0.5% today. SMCI still just kind of moving higher. SPY, we're up 0.42%. Our opening range looks like this. So we did pull back a little bit, back up. This is our range from here to here. If we break the range to the downside, I think we're going to end up around 493. If we break it to the upside, we might get to make a little bit more of a run. SMC long tails mean what? Let's go back. Means that the buyers, or means that the sellers tried to come in and then it just got back up. Sellers, so the seller, there's some profit taking, but as soon as the profit taking comes in, buyers are like, we love it, and it comes back up higher again. Persistent demand is what that would be indicative of in this situation. SPY, here is UNP. We talked about that one. That one's moved a little bit. Here's the VIX. The VIX is down, but it's not down. It's not down enough yet. It's still got work to do this week. So between now and Friday, we're going to see what we think about that. Here is Waste Management. Looks good, but tough to trade because it doesn't really give entries. Here's Walmart. Overextended. God, Walmart had such an amazing comeback from that little post-earnings dip it had. Biotech, still sideways. Materials, sideways. Communication services, strong. Looking at a mild pullback. Energy, sideways. Financial, still strong. Still looks like it's in a setup. Industrial, still strong, but looks overbought. Technology, strong, and looks like it's maybe just kind of in a uncertain position. Staples, stable. Utilities, nothing there. No defensiveness, that's for sure. Healthcare still looks strong. New highs. Healthcare looks great. I think it's just biotech and some of the offshoots that are struggling there. Lastly, consumer discretionary. You can see what I mean. It tried, and then it just sort of, it's just in this lull. Can't quite get out of it. So it's what we've been seeing. Nothing's really changed here. Okay, so yeah, we have signals. What are they? We've got a few nice financials, a couple of technology, a couple communication services. There's not a lot, so it's okay. We have to be prudent in how we take risk. If there's a signal, if there's an alert, it will come from that list, or possibly the hedge. If the hedge triggers, I'll put the alert out and talk about exactly the contract that I would be looking at, what the price is, etc. Lastly, before we go today, do not forget that we are working on section 6, which is record keeping. Record keeping is your trade log. And I have one. I just need to bring it up. There it is. It's the first part of your trade log. So this is the dashboard. That's analytics. This is the put the information in. So should be pretty self-explanatory. This is an options log. If you have stocks, if you're a stock trader, there's a stock log. So whichever one is relevant to you, pay particular attention to long, short. Did you buy it to start the trade or did you sell it to start the trade? If you bought it to start the trade, you're long. If you sold it to start the trade, you're short. All you got to do is log it, and then the spreadsheet does all the work for you. It gives you a wealth of information that is actionable information that can help you to know what aspects of your trading need to be worked on. So this week, even if you're just starting with us, then get your last 25 trades to give you your first column here. Give yourself a starting point. Give yourself some insight as to like, oh man, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. To really see a dramatic change going forward. Make it a habit. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is a habit. Habit is about record keeping. And I say this over and over because sometimes it's like, okay, then guess what, Scott? You need to go update your log. Don't fall behind, because I am a procrastinator by nature. I've come to accept that about me. All right. It's good to see everybody. Tomorrow night, we had a good one. A credit spread is a short. You're exactly right. Credit spread, if you sell stock short, it's a short, obviously. Sell a naked put, it's short. Iron condor, short. Last night, we had a great conversation on market posture and trading posture, and the bridge between the two, the role that they play, etc. So tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll have another session in the Trading Foundations, and then go from there. Have a great rest of your day. If I don't see you tomorrow night, I'll see you Friday at the weekly wrap. And as always, happy trading.